My name is Pippa Budge and I'm a Programs Officer here at the Melbourne Museum, and I'm joined by Joe Pritchard, who is one of our communication designers. So I'm really curious to hear about a project that you've worked on. Look at a project you worked on, which is the Pauline Gandel's Children Gallery. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the process, and maybe we could kind of start from the beginning and we'll talk through the slides as we go.
Yep. I guess the first thing to point out is an exhibition of this scale. It's a massive, massive team, and communication designer, you're part of that team, are an important part, but there's many, many people whose work's gone into this. We always research, do a lot of research, and particularly into our audience whenever we're doing any experiences. And if you notice, it was 0, so from birth to 5 years old. And we really wanted to get into the mindset of that age group. So I guess in a way we all got to play, and we played for a couple of years. And we got to meet a lot of 0 to 5-year-olds. So we invited some young people into the museum, and we asked them to design their perfect museum. And it was really fascinating what they came up with. Like, one of the surprises was they wanted to be scared, and within constraints, cool. But that was really cool to understand. We also talked to parents, we talked to lots of members, just to, parents didn't want to have a lot of screen time because they feel like kids are getting enough of that. But it was also really important for the parents to have a place to chill out, to have a place they could get a coffee. Coffee was really important. They needed a really good place to change nappies. So it was all the practical considerations as well. So they're all part of it. And then there's the fun part of, really, it was about kids playing, and all our research, we worked with a lot of education professionals and health professionals. So people who represented children who are hard of hearing or had learning difficulties or autism. And we really just listened. We listened a lot and had hours and hours and hours of meetings, and really just recording, what was important for their particular people and what their focus was, and what would make it a great experience for as many people as we could. And then we tested, and that was great fun. 500 children. Whoa. Over the period. We would set up sort of areas where we would just bring kids in. We wouldn't tell them what to do. We'd just observe and make notes. And we learnt a lot. And we learnt a lot of how children navigate space and how they learn by doing and playing. So,
did you find that they behave very differently in a children's gallery to like how adults behave in a museum space?
Yes, they behave erratically. So there's this thing called, we have design space, and then there's the lived space. So
what's design space?
So it's what we as designers, we think, well, the kids are going to come here, and they're going to go over there, and they're going to do this thing, and then they're going to walk along, and then they're going to politely do this thing, and they're going to learn. It's all going to be fabulous. And of course, the kids don't go there first. They go straight there, and then they ping back there, and then they do this, and then they're putting things in their mouth. And so it was learning that they will just do whatever they want to do. So we had to make that safe and make it, just everything could be an experience. You didn't have to do it chronologically. You didn't have to read anything. So even though we do have some screens and a few little activities, there's not like instructions. Kids can intuitively go up and start to paint a butterfly pattern, for instance, and there's no text. It's not complicated. Again, just to make it accessible.
Yeah, cool. Should we look at the next slide?
Yeah, so
do you want to talk us through what's happening
to show here, on the right there's a showcase with a whole lot of spotty animals and stripy animals. And I guess we weren't trying to make a playground that could be anywhere. We wanted to make it very museum focused and focused on our collection, because we love objects.
Yeah, objects are important.
So we got our spotty animals and our stripy, and then we made a camouflage disco, which is what you see at the bottom there. And I think the next slide, you might see, we then put we worked with some musicians, some composers, some video artists, and we used video footage from our collection and also some animations, and we projected it into this camouflage disco area. There's lots of mirrors because kids love looking at themselves, people.
Don't we all?
And we just made this incredibly immersive experience. So there's 60 minutes worth of different music and image, and you go on a journey, you go in the jungle. There's a scary tiger that scares kids.
Okay, so you did follow some of the advice that the kids gave you.
Yes.
And do need to be scared.
Oh, terrified.
So interesting.
Yes. Cool. So that's what that camouflage disco is. Next. So again, it was just about tactile experiences. The bottom right is what I talked about. That's a screen interactive. We have this enormous butterfly in the museum that was there before this gallery started. And we had this big debate of, do we pull the butterfly down? Do we leave it there? And in the end, we thought, well, he's kind of cool. He's enormous, but how do we kind of bring him into the space? So kids get to paint their own butterfly. And it's based on symmetry. So basically, if you're like 1 year old and you do a couple of dots, it repeats it, and all of a sudden there's success because it's a pattern. Okay. So really aimed at that very young audience. But lots of tactile discs too. So the little boy climbing through the hole there, you'll see some circles in front, and we had to do everything really low down because you know what, kids are tiny. It's not till you go, you put it into a design layout, and then when you actually see it in a space, think, everything's really low down, but that's so that they can touch them and that parents don't have to lift them up. But we just had lots of different experiences where they could sort of feel and touch and experience. I've got a couple of our prototypes. I don't know if we can see them. And some of these are really just simple. Okay. Sort of finishes.
You can see this is kind of what's this finish? This is like some sort of,
I think it's like safety flooring.
Safety flooring. There we go.
Yeah.
Design solutions.
Feel this one. It's very satisfying.
Ooh, okay.
That's just like a rubber ball.
One of those bouncy rubber balls.
Yeah. So
very fun.
We honestly just used all sort of random things like that, and didn't have to over design it. So yeah, success. So yeah, next slide. So we've got we work with some really fantastic artists and illustrators, and that's the other great thing. As a communication designer, you get to work with incredible people. You don't have to do it all yourselves. And so we worked with Ghost Patrol, who is an amazing street artist, and he did some murals in the space. So if you guys are coming up to Melbourne, you should check it out. And then he created these little characters based around shape. So we had like triangle, circle, and square world. And we had some objects from our collection that are based on those shapes. And if you actually touch those, see that white, like a pill shape? If you touch the illustrations, they animate. And our in-house animators did a fantastic job, and there's some great sounds and some surprises. And probably one of my all-time favourite thing is the bottom left, and that is some owls and crickets and frogs, and you spotlight them. So we prototyped this literally with a pool noodle and a torch, but when you shine them at the animals, they light up and you hear the sounds.
Cool.
So, and again, you see just really, really young kids being able to just move that around. It's really simple, no instructions. And of course, down the right, we've got the scary tunnel where there's some spiders and underground living giant worms and things that they can explore. So
it's amazing how you see kids in this space and they just run up and touch things.
Yes.
And it's really different to adults who just like stand back and watch and look.
So polite. They just go straight, and that's why it's great working with kids. Actually, they just go straight in there and dive in.
They know how to use it all.
They do use it all. Oh my gosh, fab. So I guess as the communication designer, part of my job was to come up with the visual language, and that includes...
Do you want to talk a bit about what we mean by visual language?
So visual language is all the things you can see. So it's colours, it's shapes, it's typography. Like I said, we didn't have much text, but we did have a little bit because there's, you know, early literacy we had to support. So even outside in the shade cloth, we brought those patterns into the shade. That's the top left. We've got these massive spinners, which is on the right, and we had to consider even, you know, the wonderful nappy changing area. So that's bottom left, that even if you're breastfeeding and you've got a toddler, they've got something to do, and it feels like it's part of the space. And sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say how much. So obviously communication design is involved in every single aspect of this particular space.
Yeah, but working very closely with the other designers. So on this project, I worked with an industrial designer called Pete Wilson and Naomi Fogel, who's an interior designer. And it was just great, that sort of cross-collaborative work. And, you know, Naomi's expert in looking at finishes and fixtures and drawing up those amazing spaces, and Pete again as well, some of those, particularly those moving parts and the physical form.
Right, so that's why these collaborative processes and group projects are so good. These skills are good to learn.
It is good, and it's good to start early. It's not just about you and what you want to do, it's about working together. And I think it ends up being a better project for it because you get many voices, many views. Yeah. And bottom right, we've got Bill. There's Bill. He's a bowerbird. So we wanted to connect the Children's Gallery to the rest of the museum. And we do have a forest gallery here, and we have a bowerbird. His name's not Bill, but we've chosen a different name because our current bowerbird, who's Errol, I believe, you know, he may not be around the next 10 years or so. So we created a character. Bowerbirds are awesome, and they're very like a curator because they collect and they sort things. So we thought Bill was a great story to tell. So it was great for me as a communication designer to get the opportunity to illustrate a book, which was a bit of a childhood dream. So that was cool.
Very cool. So many different things you got to do on this one project.
I know, right? Yes, yes. Best project ever.
So let's talk a bit about process then, because this is obviously a lot of different things were going on in this huge project.
Yes.
So maybe we might talk a little bit more about process and how you come up with ideas and how you go from all these big ideas and this feedback to this final product.
Yes, and you have to make decisions. You can't do it all. But I guess process helps with that. And I'm going to use the train experience as an example. This is at the beginning of the exhibition. We needed something really big and bright and bold to attract visitors down because they tended to turn right into the dinosaurs, and a lot of families didn't even know we had a children's gallery. So it was really important to bring us, you know, to bring the experience out of the gallery. So we've moved it. We had this amazing 1/3 scale train, which is that photo up the top. So again, a museum object. However, because it's a museum object, you can't climb on it. You can't touch it. And what do children want to do?
Climb and touch things.
Exactly. So we created a train experience where we could have the real object, but we created a tunnel around it, which you can see some concepts there, bottom left. One's a really small door, so it's not adult size. So immediately at the beginning, we're saying, you know, this space is for you kids, not for your parents. It's, you know, they can come in, but it's really designed just for you. And kids had a great train experience. They could look at the train, but we had sound and light. And again, this is a funny story because we prototyped this tunnel and we brought in some kids and we thought they're going to hear the train sounds and they're going to be a train. They're going to and guess what they did? It's a circular form. They actually used it as a slide. So they were just sliding. And we were like, okay, but they're having fun sliding. So we made sure it was a slide. And that's totally cool. We made it very safe. We also put in the sound and the light and worked with some amazing external artists to help do the sound and light. But when you emerge outside the other end of the tunnel, you've entered museum station, and suddenly it's a different museum world. And part of our process, so you saw some of our research and some of our colours, and we often build models. So this is a scale model made out of foam, and really this is a great way to sort of just resolve the design, to work out if it's, you know, if it works, if the proportions are right. It's also good to show clients. So in this case, this is the senior stakeholders of the museum, so they can totally understand what the experience is going to be, and, you know, you can put little people in it to scale and sort of get an idea of, you know, just if it's going to work for this size people. So we had our train here, which is our object you can't touch, but then we created some train carriages that basically start to deconstruct, and they end up being really simple shapes. This reminds me a little bit of the Flintstones. You guys probably don't know the Flintstones, but it was this cool show when I was young. Basic shapes of circles that they can jump on and explore. So they can have some fun and, you know, actually physically engage with the topic, with trains. So I'll take that back off you. So yeah, so that's the train. It's been really successful. It's right next to the cafe. So, you know, parents can sit there and have a coffee, child safely sliding down the side inside the tunnel, and everyone's happy.
And kids love trains.
They do. So do adults.
Yay.
Got some train spotters here.
Aww.
Yeah. So that's some people, some kids running around. We have one traditional label in this whole exhibition, and it's right at the front of the train. And that was because we also knew there were some people who love trains who might not be under 5, and they might want to have a bit of information about how old it is, where it came from. So that's the last label, and beyond then it's really an experiential type of experience. So there's an old Spencer Street clock from the station there too, which we incorporated.
So a nice mix of interactive things and objects, and lots of communication design in this.
Yep, and all those tactile discs are on the back there. We have, you might be able to see a tiny little cloud. There's like a cloud shape. And that has, we introduced some languages other than English. So there's 42 languages, and they're just little, we call them welcome clouds. And that was recognising that other audience members might have been the grandparents who come along, and they may not speak English. So it was a way of saying, so this one says train, and it's got a number of languages using the word train, just to welcome, I guess, the grandparents. And we've got some Braille in there too. So just introducing early literacy to those kids.
Wonderful. So from, okay, do you want to talk through these slides as well?
So that's inside the tunnel. So that's the slide I talked about on the side there. It's all tiled to look like a train station, so they can relate it a little bit to the real world. But there's lots of music, and we actually used sound recording off that engine. So we try to be authentic as much as we can, and we go to great detail here at the museum at times. So we blended the sounds of that train engine with some music just to make it contemporary, and also not to make it too predictable. I guess it was also trying to surprise people, or annoying, you know. Sometimes, you know, the poor people who work here, if they just heard all day, you know, ooh, sort of sounds all day, every day, it would probably drive them a little bit nuts. So again, it's like about a 20-minute cycle, so it's not too bad.
Yes, it was lovely to see you all, and thanks so much, Jo, for coming and chatting with us about your amazing work.
Thank you.
And please do all come and visit us if you're in Melbourne to check out the Children's Gallery in real life.